Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. This will be the final edition of the show this week. So let's make the most of it, shall we? If you'd like to give your thoughts, 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show. Also on social media, at Gingerly Tweets on X, at Gingerwatch on the Gram. Let's start with the Nuggets last night. What Jamal Murray is doing right now, he isn't just putting together a bounce back season. He's putting together a career season, which must put him in the All-Star game conversation. Points, assists, rebounds, all right now, career highs for Jamal Murray after he put up 29 points, 8 assists, and pulled down 3 rebounds in the Nuggets' 125-115 win over Memphis last night. And it's not just those raw numbers, the accumulation. Fourth quarter last night, this is what Jamal Murray did. Nuggets enter the quarter up by 8. Jamal Murray hits a 3, assists on 2 other shots to stretch the lead to 13. He exits the game when the Nuggets are up 11. The Nuggets lose 4 points over that time. He comes back into the game when the Nuggets are down 7. The next 3 Nuggets baskets are all 3-pointers, 2 of them by him, and he sets up Nikola Jokic for another. Ultimately, he also kind of iced the game with the dunk with about 45 seconds to go. 19 of the team's 32 points in that fourth quarter came from either Jamal Murray baskets or assists. And for a guy who is clearly the sidekick to Nikola Jokic, 19 of 32 points coming through him, that's a big number. And you could argue that's not even the best Jamal Murray performance we've had in the last 4 days. 14 of his 26 points against Houston came in the fourth quarter. Shot 63% from the field, had 10 assists in a much bigger game than last night. Plus, we know he has a flair for the dramatic, tends to be at his best in the biggest games. How about that first meeting this year with Minnesota when he dropped 43? So why is this all happening? You could point to the supporting cast. You could point to Nikola Jokic being at arguably his best. But I think it starts with the fact that Jamal Murray, he's out there every night. 17 games into the year for the Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray's missed 1. That's it. And for a player that, in most shooters are rhythm players, right? But Jamal Murray takes that to another degree. And what you have seen over the last couple of years are these fits and starts to Jamal Murray's season. And every time he starts to get something built up, he suffers an injury. He's out for X number of games, and it takes him 4 or 5 to get back going again. The fact that he has been in the lineup consistently, night in and night out, to me is at the top of the list. He is staggering with a better second unit than the Nuggets have had in years. He's playing with Nikola Jokic, who has been playing at, even by Jokic standards, maybe his best. So there's certainly some of that goes along with it, but it's the continuity, it's being in the lineup every single night and being healthy, right? And not being hampered by a lingering this or that. What it's been is just one game to the next, Jamal Murray carrying over his best play. Now, as far as the new All-Star game format, because this is the NBA and they screw a lot up, they kind of screwed this up. Because we want to see Team USA versus Team World. And we want the best international players against the best American players. That's not necessarily what we're going to get here. And how you judge whether Jamal Murray isn't going to be an all-star this year or not, these criteria and the way that they're going to pick these teams is important. So it's going to be 5 starters and 7 reserves from each conference. The way fans are voting is East-West. Okay, and then they're just going to take all the international guys who get picked and put them on one team, and then all the American players are going to be on the other 2 teams. Given the way things are in the NBA right now, they might have to go strictly America, North America, and Europe. That's the way it might end up once they get this list. You put Giannis and Jokic and Wemby and, Şengün, Markkanen. Not saying all of those guys make the team, but just the guys that are at the top of my mind. They go on one team. You probably put Shea and Jamal, if he makes it, on a North American team. Some of the Canadians along with the Americans, and then there's another team that's all American players. That's how I think it's probably going to shape up. But this is how they're picking all-stars. Okay, it's conferences, East-West. So the question becomes, is Jamal Murray one of the 12 most deserving all-stars? Because here's the other thing, positionless. It's positionless. No longer is it you got to worry about, how crowded is the guard position. It's just the straight 12 most deserving in one entity's mind or another. The fans' mind when it comes to the starters, the coaches, and players' minds as far as the reserves go. But it's positionless. So is Jamal Murray one of the 12 most deserving players in the Western Conference right now? And I have to say, absolutely he is. Here's the way I kind of see things lining up as of right now. It is the fan vote. Fans, as much as we love our fellow fans, it tends to become a popularity contest. I don't think Jamal Murray wins that. So you're talking, I just sketched out these 5. Jokic, Luka, Shea, Steph, Durant. Right? Durant would be the one guy that I would argue maybe doesn't deserve to be a starter, but that's a brand name and he's on a high-profile team with the Rockets. He probably gets in as a starter. That'd be my guess. And Jamal Murray probably shouldn't. Isn't one of the 5 best. That's not the argument I'm making. But I'm saying those are the 5 guys that probably get picked out of the West to be the starters. So now you have a group in no particular order: James Harden, Devin Booker, Alperen Şengün, Victor Wembanyama, Austin Reeves, Lauri Markkanen, Jamal Murray, and Anthony Edwards. One of those guys is going to get left off. Now, it could be Jamal Murray. It could be him that gets left off. But allow me to make an early statistical case. You would say, oh, no way Jamal Murray gets in over Anthony Edwards. Are you sure about that? Statistically, they are identical. Like, Jamal Murray is putting up 3 points less a game than Anthony Edwards is. Jamal Murray's has 3 more assists a game, and they're about even on rebounds. To me, that's a statistical push. While Jamal Murray is leading one of the best teams in the NBA to start, the team that has, to me, asserted themselves as the threat to Oklahoma City. I want to put any team on either side of the bracket above Denver right now. They are, if the answer to the question, if not OKC, then who, based on these first 17 games or so, is Denver. Does that not factor in a little bit? And then it comes down to, how healthy is Victor Wembanyama? If they're not going to vote him a starter, is he going to have enough? He's out 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll see how things go. I would say that Jamal Murray is one of the 12 most deserving players in the Western Conference of being an all-star. But for right now, and if he keeps playing this level, I'll continue to bang the drum for Jamal Murray to be an all-star. But let's just say he doesn't get voted in. Okay, it's a pretty good group right there. And if you're just not really following what else is going on in the NBA, Austin Reeves is playing great. Austin Reeves has been great for the Lakers. Lauri Markkanen, I know not a single Jazz game matters, but Lauri Markkanen's putting up some big numbers. So the group I just mentioned, I think they all have an all-star case. But I'm saying Jamal Murray has one, and probably a better one than some of the guys I just mentioned. But even if he doesn't make it, right, even if it becomes a popularity contest or God forbid they vote in LeBron as a starter, the fact of the matter is, whether he gets in or not, Jamal Murray is playing at an all-star level. He is a deserving all-star, which you cannot say about Jamal Murray for most of his career. That's the level that he is playing at right now. The numbers that he is putting out. And that's all I asked of him repeatedly during the offseason. Just be deserving of an all-star nod. The voting is the voting, and we'll find flaws in it, and we'll sit here and complain if Jamal Murray continues to play at this level and is on the outside looking in. But he's in the conversation. He's squarely in the conversation. The sheer numbers that he's putting up, but the impact he is having, that two-man game between he and Jokic, it's back to being the most lethal two-man game that any NBA team can throw it out on the floor. Now, are they the two most talented? Well, I would argue Luka and LeBron together is probably more talented. But when you mix in the numbers they're putting up, the results they're getting, the way they work together, that two-man game, which the Nuggets are going to in these fourth quarters, that's why Jamal Murray is having the impact he's having against the Rockets in the fourth quarter and last night against Memphis in the fourth quarter, is because they're going to that two-man game. And you look, if you want to look at the play-by-play, it's Jokic scores assisted by Murray. Murray scores assisted by Jokic. Or you watch it and it's Murray, Jokic, and then maybe one other player involved at some point. But it starts with those two. That two-man game is back. And with all of these other factors, the depth that the Denver Nuggets have being chief among them, you are getting the best out of both Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Especially Jamal Murray. He is at his best. And but you got to give him the guy credit. Right? He has been called out for the last 2 years about staying healthy, preventing injuries, being in shape, being ready to go for the season. David Adelman challenged him, not by name, but we all knew who he was talking about, challenged him when he took over as the full-time head coach. And credit to Jamal Murray. A couple weeks later, he's out in Vegas working out, and he looks great. And that's why the Nuggets look right now as the clear biggest threat to Oklahoma City in the NBA. Now, if Oklahoma City can just lose a game at some point along the way, that would help the Nuggets a little bit more. But another big fourth quarter from Jamal Murray, answering every shot that Memphis put up there in the fourth quarter. And just look at the numbers. He deserves right now to be in consideration for an all-star spot. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. That wasn't the only storyline from last night. Far from it. Nikola Jokic doing a couple of very crazy things, and Peyton Watson continuing to ascend. We may need to have that conversation. Can you lose Peyton Watson? Or do you have to ride this wave, maybe at the expense of one of the most beloved members of the Denver Nuggets? We'll talk about that later. Coming up next, 7 AFC playoff teams. Not a one of them is head and shoulders above the rest. Who do I trust the most going into the playoffs? If this is the field we're going to get, I'll tell you coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300. Get a jump on your holiday gift giving with the Louisa Graff Black Friday giveaway. Just go to extrasports1300.com to enter to win a sterling silver lab-grown diamond pendant and earring set from the fine folks at Louisa Graff Jewelers. Entries close tomorrow. So sooner rather than later would probably be a good idea there. Broncos back in action Sunday night. They did not flex the game out of Sunday night. It will be Bo Nix versus Marcus Mariota, but I think the NFL is clinging to the hope, and the Commanders as well, that Jaden Daniels will be available, but all the reporting says it will probably be Marcus Mariota. So it should be a golden opportunity for the Broncos to not only extend their winning streak, but also perhaps move up to the coveted top spot in the AFC, depending on what happens with the Patriots this weekend. But I said this yesterday. You know, with Kansas City being where they're at right now, there's not a team that you look at in the AFC and you just go, whoa. Right? Like LA Rams on the NFC side feel like that team. But that's on the other side of the bracket. Okay, there's not one team in the AFC that you are continually impressed by. There are teams with higher ceilings that on occasion show it. But there isn't one out of these 7 teams that week in and week out you're thoroughly impressed by. So it's wide open. It truly is. And you can throw your lot in with whatever team you want to, but just know that every single one of these teams are convincing themselves that in a wide open AFC, and we'll see if Kansas City gets in there and how perspectives change. But as of right now, all of these teams can to themselves make a case for getting out of the AFC, including the Denver Broncos. But ultimately, the question becomes, who do you trust? If this is the group, these 7 teams are what it's going to be, who do you trust the most? And I was ranking these. And I think my rankings speak to how open this is, because I believe there is one team, one of these 7, that my confidence in them matches up with what seed they are right now in the AFC playoffs. At number 7, the team I trust the least out of these AFC playoff teams, it's the LA Chargers, who are right now the 5th seed. I don't even think we're going to be talking about LA in the playoffs. I think Kansas City is going to jump them. And we will have a different conversation when that does happen of where you put Kansas City. I have omitted Kansas City because until they have one of these 7 spots, they don't need to be in the conversation. But I'll just tell you, looking ahead, the Chargers, I don't think are long for this AFC playoff picture. And it's attrition. I like Herbert. I like Jim Harbaugh. But they are just so banged up. They have lost so many players. I just don't see how they get across the finish line. And let's say that they do. They immediately become the team at the bottom of everyone's list, I think. Because then it becomes, all right, do you buy into the Chargers this postseason? You saw what happened in Houston. Okay, so they were going to deal with that no matter how healthy they are or are not. Right? Those perennial questions about Justin Herbert and the Chargers in the postseason. So even if they get in, I don't know that anyone's going to have them sticking around very long. So they would be at number 7. The next team that I trust a little bit more than the Chargers, but not more than anybody else in the AFC, is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are the only team that my confidence in them matches up with the current seed that they hold. They are the 6th seed. I think that their defense is very turnover dependent, and they're going to be entering the playoffs with quarterbacks as the herd gets thinned out a little bit, quarterbacks that will take better care of the football than some of the QBs that the Jaguars have had the pleasure of facing this year. They have beaten just one team currently in the playoffs, and that is LA. Trevor Lawrence is way too Jekyll Hyde for my taste. One week he looks like the guy we hoped and dreamed he would be, and other weeks he looks quite pedestrian. I can't buy into Jacksonville. At number 5, I have the current AFC 4 seed in the Baltimore Ravens. I cannot say all is right with the world in Baltimore because they beat the Jets, the Browns, the Vikings, and the Dolphins. I knew they would. I said that Lamar Jackson was going to come back and the Ravens were going to take over that division. Pittsburgh blew it a few weeks ago by losing and leaving the door open. I saw all this coming, but that doesn't mean it's onward and upward with the Baltimore Ravens being a legitimate threat to win a Super Bowl. I still have major questions about that defense. And going back to the Chargers, it's not like we don't have postseason questions about Lamar Jackson and company. So Baltimore has more to show me before I want to move them up this list. For right now, they're the team I have the 5th most confidence in. Not a lot. Number 4, I have the current 3rd seed, the Indianapolis Colts. I like their skill position players, but they have a lot of potential cold weather games that they may be playing in. Denver, New England, Buffalo, they could all be going through, and they might have to go through 2 of them when the bracket is all set. Indoor teams should be met with a healthy amount of skepticism. And I feel like I've seen this Daniel Jones movie before. It was last year, and it was Sam Darnold. As brilliant as Sam Darnold was during the regular season, we saw how that movie ended. They ended up going up against a legit Rams team, and Sam Darnold wasn't nearly good enough to get them through. I can see that with Daniel Jones here. It's going to have to be very Jonathan Taylor-centric how the Indianapolis Colts navigate the AFC. And by the way, I would expect 4 of the top 8 rush defenses to be in the AFC bracket. Denver, Kansas City, Jacksonville. I'm missing one. But 4 of the top 8 rush defenses I expect to be in the AFC playoffs. So I think I'm not super down on the Colts because they could get games indoors. Because again, I think LA and Jacksonville, I think they really have to stretch the truth to believe that they can get out of the AFC. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson can convince themselves, and these top 4 teams, I don't think they have to do a ton of convincing. I'm just pointing out why I have the Colts lower than maybe their seed is, or where they have been for most of the season, to give them credit. They've been at the top of the AFC pretty much the entire way. At number 3, I have the Denver Broncos. And I think right there along, they might need home field more than any of these other teams. Now, the good news is there's only one team in the AFC that would have home field over Denver. And Denver, with the schedule they have remaining, I think has every opportunity to get the top seed in the AFC. But I think they need home field more than any of these other teams. They need the road to the Super Bowl to go through Denver. And right now, if the season ended today, just be honest with yourself. If the season ended today, the Denver Broncos would be facing Buffalo. In Denver, but they'd be facing Buffalo. How confident would you be in the Denver Broncos going up against the Buffalo Bills if they played in the playoffs? This is a Bo Nix thing. It absolutely is. He is part of my calculation. This is also we still have yet to see, and it was only one game, so I'm not going to, put too much on Sean Payton, to figure out the run game without J.K. Dobbins in one game. But now you've had a bye week. Starting Sunday, we need to see that the Broncos aren't missing a lot without J.K. Dobbins. If it turns out that they are missing a lot in the run game without J.K. Dobbins, then I think the Broncos might actually slip down this list. But conversely, if R.J. Harvey matches up with what Sean Payton and Bo Nix said the week going into the Kansas City game about how R.J. Harvey's built for a heavier workload, and he shows it, then there's upward mobility with the Denver Broncos. But they, as of right now, it's a question mark without J.K. Dobbins how that run game is going to be. I have them at 3. At number 2, I have the New England Patriots, who are the current number 1 seed. All this is about is, do I trust Drake May or Josh Allen more? That's what this comes down to. I know the Patriots have the better coach. I know that they've beaten Buffalo this season. But if I am putting most of my confidence in one of these teams, it has to be Buffalo still. And they've failed to impress. I feel like Kansas City is kind of a compass for them. If Kansas City's faltering, then that's when you see Buffalo all over the place, building themselves up to take on Kansas City brings the best out of Buffalo. And you saw it. Chiefs were rolling. They went into Buffalo, and Buffalo beat them straight up. And then things have gotten a little goofy with the Buffalo Bills ever since. As of today, when you're talking about Daniel Jones, Bo Nix, Drake May, and I have Josh Allen, I'll take my chances. Right now with this field, even though the Bills right now are the 7th seed, and look, the Buffalo and New England, let's not call time of death on the AFC East just yet, but it does look like New England's going to win that division. But I just look at it through this lens and say, Buffalo, let's say they have to go on the road. They go to New England, tough game. I'll take Buffalo. They have to go into Denver, tough game. I'm going to take Josh Allen. And can you imagine just playing this forward if the field stays the way it is, no Kansas City, and Buffalo still falls short of the Super Bowl? They lost to Burrow that one year, but pretty much it's just been Kansas City. That's the team they can't get past. They've gotten past Baltimore. They blew out the Broncos last year. Right now, I'm going to take Buffalo. It's subject to change. We got a handful, 6 weeks left in the season. And I guess the way I would say it is, it's not that most of my confidence is in Buffalo so much as my confidence is in Josh Allen. Over Drake May, over Bo Nix, over Daniel Jones, over Lamar Jackson, over Trevor Lawrence, over Justin Herbert. That's not the only reason. But that's what I put at the top of the list. That's where my confidence is in the 7 AFC teams. You could tell me where your confidence lies, which AFC team that's currently in the postseason picture are you most confident in? 719-247-1313. Coming up on Friday. Could it be the last ever meeting between the Air Force Falcons and CSU Rams in football, and why that may not bother the head coach of one of the two teams playing on Friday in Fort Collins? Which AFC playoff team do you trust the most? Your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Tom says, take your chances with Josh Allen, no wide receivers, and a mediocre defense. I'll take Denver's very elite defense. If only QBs won games, the Chiefs would have beaten the Broncos without Dobbins and Surtain. But this is why I went through the specific exercise I just did. Because this is not a question of who the better team is right now. That's what you're judging it on. This is the playoffs we're talking about here. And yes, quarterback is the most important thing. But it's not the only thing. To your point, fine. You believe in the Broncos defense? I do as well. That's why I didn't put them last. I put them third. Because I do think that they have a great defense. But last year, I'll see if quarterback was the only thing that matters, Patrick Mahomes would have beaten the Broncos without J.K. Dobbins and Pat Surtain. And I will raise you the idea that Kansas City was fraudulent last year because they won all these one-score games. And where did they end up? Back in the Super Bowl. Why? Because Patrick Mahomes in the postseason is different. That's why it's who do you trust more? If you want to put your faith in that Broncos defense, I think it's very smart that you pointed out the defense and not Bo Nix. But this isn't a question of who's better right now. This isn't a power rankings. This is who do you trust more in the playoffs? And there are a couple of guys and couple of coaches, couple of teams that may not be on paper better than some of these others, but they've been through it. Part of my calculation, however unscientific it might be, is that I saw Bo Nix make one really good pass to Troy Franklin and then get his butt kicked the rest of the game. I've not seen Drake May in the playoffs. So if you want to take the leap of faith with these two quarterbacks and say Bo Nix in playoff game 2, 3, 4 and Drake May playoff game 1, if you would take them over Josh Allen because of all of these other reasons, that's fine. But that's why I specifically said this is about who you trust more in the playoffs, not who's better right now. People could have sworn that Kansas City was not nearly as good as they used to be, and yet somehow in the playoffs, they turned it on and they were different. But since you brought up the Broncos, let's just take another unscientific poll. Say this Sunday the Broncos were not playing the Commanders. Let's say the Denver Broncos are facing the Buffalo Bills in round 1 of the playoffs. I'm not trying to lead anyone into any direction. I'm asking the question. Broncos play Sunday against the Buffalo Bills in Denver in the postseason. Who are you taking? Right now, with everything, every piece of evidence you have accumulated over these many weeks, who are you taking? I think I would take Buffalo. But what I'm saying is right now, The only two teams that I would trust more than the Denver Broncos in the playoffs are New England and Buffalo. It's not many. But I understand that I understand the place I am in. If I'm not effusive with my praise, I am hating on the Denver Broncos. And if I give them their flowers, then I'm crazy because I'm in with the crazy Broncos fans that are being deluded into thinking their team is actually good. I understand where I am, and it's the position I have chosen for myself. And here's the thing, too. The Broncos can show some things over the last few weeks of the season to where maybe they move up. And conversely, other teams can show me that maybe I had them too high. New England, Buffalo. The two things that I want to see most, because let's be real about this. If the Denver Broncos can't figure out a way coming off of a bye to beat Marcus Mariota and the Commanders, then they have taken their eye off the ball. And that is, it's not to say that they're fraudulent. It's just that this is the time of year you can't take your eye off the ball. You got to be locked in every single week. If they mess around and lose on Sunday, that's not a good loss. It doesn't make you completely rethink everything about the Denver Broncos, but it would be a bad loss. It'd be a very bad loss if they lost on Sunday night. But the two things I'm looking for, because I don't think that the Broncos are going to lose. The question of are the Broncos going to win is not on the table because I think they will. Can the Bo Nix throwing the deep ball accurately, completing deep passes like he did against Kansas City, can that happen against Washington? I don't see why it can, unless perhaps Sunday was a bit, or last Sunday was a bit of an outlier in terms of who Bo Nix is throwing the ball down the field. If it's clicked with him and he's figured it out, then he should continue it against Washington. So, but that's what I want to see. There are going to be opportunities to throw the ball downfield against this defense. There absolutely will be. Can Bo Nix hit them at the rate he did against Kansas City? Because it was very impressive. Bo Nix on the deep ball against KC. If he continues to do that, if he repeats that, then the Broncos have a chance to engender more trust from me. If the Broncos are able to establish RJ Harvey as their lead back, doesn't have to be as good as J.K. Dobbins, but if they can establish him as a legit lead back, understanding that they'll mix in the other guys, then that has a chance to make me trust them more. The defense, I'm good. I know what they are, and they might be getting Pat Surtain back this week. Like, that's good. That's why they're where they are. It's Sean Payton, and it's the defense. But there are a couple of questions here that the Broncos can answer coming out of the bye week to further fortify themselves as, apparently in Tom's mind and maybe many others, as the favorite to get out of the AFC. I don't have them there yet, but there's still a handful of weeks to go. Which AFC playoff team as of right now, sorry Texans, sorry Chiefs, sorry Steelers, you're on the outside looking in. We'll talk about you if you get back in here. Of the 7 AFC teams, who do you put your most trust in? 719-24-7. 13-13. Speaking of the Broncos, getting some of their holiday shopping done early, extending Will Lutz who else might be getting a contract extension under their tree this holiday season? Hour 2 on this Tuesday. Appreciate you watching the show on YouTube at XTRA Sports 1300. You can also watch it on all of our other social media platforms at the same handle. While you're there, like, subscribe, follow, and comment, because this is an interactive experience. It's better when I hear from you, just like it was better last segment when I heard from Tom. And we'll pick that conversation up here in a little bit. The question is, of a bunch of teams that you could look at it one of two ways. You could either say that every team has something that you go, that makes them, because we can all acknowledge that the AFC is wide open. When the team that has gone to the Super Bowl year after year after year is not even among the 7 playoff teams today, that by definition is wide open. Right? We can all acknowledge the AFC is wide open. Every one of these teams has a thing, a hook, where you're like, and with Tom, it was the defense of the Denver Broncos. With me, it's Josh Allen. Might be Lamar for some people. Might be, Vrabel. I don't know. Find your own reason. But I'm just saying all of these teams have something that if you make that the most important thing, then you can make a case for them getting out of the AFC. Or you can look at it conversely and say all of these teams are deeply flawed. None of these teams right now can you say are in the class of, let's say, the Rams on the other side of the NFL in the NFC. None of these teams check a ton of boxes like the Rams do. Broncos have good home field advantage. They have defense. They have good coaching. Bills have Josh Allen. Bills have playoff experience. And I know ultimately it doesn't end up well for them, but they have beaten plenty of other teams along the way before they inevitably run into Kansas City. But to Tom's earlier point, Bills don't have a whole lot of other stuff going for them. They're all flawed. None of these are complete teams. And they all have something that you really like. So the question is, which AFC team do you trust the most? I say Buffalo, New England, Denver. 1, 2, 3. Tom says Denver 1. What say you? 719-24-7, 1313. Bit of Broncos news over the bye week as they have extended Will Lutz, deservedly so. I mean, that guy has been clutch as all get out over the last few weeks. And Sean Payton on his weekly conference call said that they were talking to some other players or would talk to some other players in short order about trying to get them extended. Will Lutz makes the most sense. Of all of their pending free agents, Will Lutz is as close to a no-brainer as they come. Of course you sign Will Lutz. And if Will Lutz gets the yips, like we've seen from other quarterback or other kickers, all right, you're gone. It's also not a position that you'd be too worried to move on from. So the question becomes, who are those other players that Sean and George Payton are starting to have the conversation with? And it gets really interesting when you look at it, because part of the reason why Will Lutz is such a no-brainer is also because you ask the question, if you don't have Will Lutz moving forward, then who do you have? All of these other pending free agents, there's a lesser, albeit a lesser option But there's a player that you say, well, if they were elevated into this position, could they not do just as well? Here's my case in point. I would very much doubt that both Alex Singleton and Justin Strnad are going to be Denver Broncos next year. One, I would bet you anything one of them will. Both of them, I don't know. So they're a perfect example. I think with the way he is played and taking the human element out of it, right? Because Alex Singleton is dealing with something bigger than football, and it's hard to, but this is what George and Sean Payton have to do. You have to extricate yourself for that. You can't, where the Broncos are right now, they can't make sentimental choices. Okay, I think all things being equal, Alex Singleton remaining on the Denver Broncos moving forward over Justin Strnad would make sense. I think that would be the Broncos' druthers. But if Alex Singleton wants a little bit too much money and you can get Justin Strnad for a few dollars less, couldn't you say that you'd be in a decent position at that position if you had Strnad over Singleton? You saw Strnad fill in when Dre Greenlaw was out. Right? And it was almost like Singleton took on the role of Dre Greenlaw and Justin Strnad took on the role of Alex Singleton. I thought Justin Strnad was very good. And you have Dre Greenlaw moving forward. So I think you can give Alex Singleton credit for what he has done, the totality of his work, and put him over Justin Strnad. But how much more does that cost the Denver Broncos? So that's one position. Another position is defensive line with John Franklin Myers and Malcolm Roach. Again, who would you like if money were no object? John Franklin Myers. But is that a position where you're willing to say maybe sacrifice a little bit there to also save money and just make Malcolm Roach the guy? Throw him into the mix on a more regular basis on that defensive line. I could see the Broncos making that decision as well. But in trying to answer the question of who the Broncos might be approaching here, I kind of think it's John Franklin Myers more than the other guys I mentioned. I think John Franklin Myers has fit in exceptionally well with this Broncos. He's fit in with this pass rush. He's not the one of the top 3, maybe even 4 guys that we talk about on a weekly basis, but he's been very good. That would be a guy, because also, why are you reaching out now? You're reaching out now to try and save yourself some money, right? Don't let them hit the free agent market. With the way that John Franklin Myers has performed this year with this Broncos defense, I think it would be in the Broncos' best interest to try and extend him now and not let him go out onto the open market. Malcolm Roach, sure. You can let him go out on the market. I even think that you'd be okay in some way letting Alex Singleton and Justin Strnad test the market. I don't think either one of those guys are ones that you have to lock down now. I think the Broncos have a great chance of bringing one of the two of them back. But Franklin Myers appears to me like a guy who could get, and I'm going to make a comparison to a Bronco of the not so distant past, Malik Jackson. Remember Malik Jackson? part of that Super Bowl 50 defense, was terrific as a part of that defense. What happened? He hit the open market and Jacksonville went, ooh, gimme, and paid him way more than the Broncos were willing to do it. I could see someone doing the same for John Franklin Myers. So that would be a player that, like Will Lutz, you're like, let's try to get this done now. Save ourselves a few bucks, but also don't risk losing this guy. If Malcolm Roach were to hit the open market, I think you feel confident with, look, his ties to Sean Payton, the promise of perhaps a bigger role. If John Franklin Myers also gets to free agency and gets paid, I think it would be John Franklin Myers would be the next player on the list. And here's the thing about the Denver Broncos. They're kind of like the Colorado Avalanche. They're getting a lot of their business done. They have a lot of their guys under contract. No, you're listening and like Will Lutz, John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, Alex Singleton. Like, these aren't, maybe Will Lutz, given how high profile he's been in recent weeks. But in the grand scheme of things, the importance to the Denver Broncos, these are not guys at the very top of the list, right? Well, that's where you give credit to George Payton for getting all these guys signed and them not having much internally to take care of. So I thought Will Lutz was the obvious number one. They got that done. To me, the next guy up is John Franklin Myers. And we'll see. I don't know where his motivations lie. I've seen him on social media talking about how much he wants to remain a Bronco. And you can believe him and also say that's what people who can only negotiate with one team would say. I think you're more okay with potentially, let's say, losing Alex Singleton and replacing him with Justin Stronach on a full-time basis than you are replacing John Franklin Myers with Malcolm Roach. The one that is fascinating to me is J.K. Dobbins. And we haven't gotten into this subject yet. So J.K. Dobbins out for the year unless the Broncos make the Super Bowl. Got to throw out that little caveat. Is he a player that the Denver Broncos are going to try to extend now? I don't think that he is. Because this is another year of J.K. Dobbins suffering a significant injury. I think at the very least, the Broncos are like, go ahead and test the free agent market. I think they'll let J.K. Dobbins venture out and they'll say, come back to us. Let us match any offer. I don't think J.K. Dobbins, coming off of, 5 years in a row now? He's missed a significant amount of time with an injury. I really don't think that there's going to be this bidding war for J.K. Dobbins, as good as he was. But the very thing that has been the bugaboo with J.K. Dobbins has popped up again. And how many times are you willing to bet on a guy like that? So I think the shrewd thing for the Broncos to do would be to, one, spend the rest of this season making RJ Harvey the best possible running back he could be, which helps your bargaining position, but also helps you trying to get out of the AFC. We know that the Broncos are going to want more than one. Tyler Bidet and Jaleel McLaughlin are not long for the Denver Broncos. They're going, if it's not J.K. Dobbins, they will have to go elsewhere. But if RJ Harvey emerges over these final handful of weeks, I say let J.K. Dobbins go out. And if he doesn't get a great offer, and this is kind of what the Chargers did with him last year. So you're going to risk losing him. But if RJ Harvey emerges at the tail end of this season and you're the Denver Broncos, are you going to worry about that? So I don't know. Some other Luke Wattenberg, another one, could be that they're trying to get locked up, get that offensive line intact moving forward. He could be another one. So I'd say Wattenberg and John Franklin Myers. Everybody else, I think you say go ahead and test the market. And if we want to beat the best offer that you get, we'll do that. 719-247. 1313. Take your thoughts on that. Coming up next, I said about a week ago that no one was ready to have this conversation. No one wanted to have this conversation. I'm going to bring it up. Is it better for the Nuggets to invest in Peyton Watson, even if it's at the expense of losing Aaron Gordon? Giving my thoughts on that next here on Extra Sports 1300. Get a jump on your holiday gift giving and avoid the crowds. Crowds are still a thing on Black Friday, aren't they? We got the Louisa Graf Black Friday giveaway going on. If you go to extrasports1300.com, which you should sooner rather than later, because the contest ends tomorrow, you can enter to win a sterling silver lab-grown diamond pendant and earring set from Louisa Graf Jewelers. Entries, again, close tomorrow, so do that sooner rather than later, and you can do it right now on the site if you are listening to this show through extrasports1300.com. So another good Peyton Watson performance last night as the Nuggets beat the Memphis Grizzlies 125-115. He had 27 points on 11 of 22 shooting, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. And he had a big performance last week against New Orleans, where he put up 32 points. And as Aaron Gordon remains out, a shrewd, cutthroat, if you will, front office executive would look at these two situations with Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson and say the thing that makes the most sense for our organization is to cut costs with a younger player with more upside. Now, I still don't know enough about this Nuggets front office of Ben Tenzer and John Wallace to know if they think that way or if they are very sentimental towards the players. Part of me says they signed Christian Brown. There's a loyalty factor in there because they could have left Christian Brown in the same spot Peyton Watson is, pending restricted free agent with no extension. But let's just go through this exercise here. Because the reasons for keeping Peyton Watson, like I said, younger, cheaper, Aaron Gordon's contract is going up over $30 million next year. And Tim Hardaway is set to become a free agent. You will probably lose Jonas Valanciunas. Bruce Brown is a pending free agent. You have the chance to lose all the depth that you just acquired. That's a very real possibility here. How are you going to replenish that? To me, I don't think you can hope to do that if you, at the end of this season, turn around and give Peyton Watson the same contract you gave Christian Brown while keeping Aaron Gordon on the books. I just don't see it. There is a bit of good fortune that has befallen the Denver Nuggets because of, Bruce Brown's desire to come back. They found a trade partner who they could take advantage of in the Sacramento Kings. Like, all of these things aren't all going to come together every single year from here on out to get the Nuggets the depth that they currently have. It's just not feasible. Now, I will pick out an early Nuggets target, Nikola Vucevic, with the Chicago Bulls. He's a pending free agent. If Valanciunas leaves and ultimately goes to Europe, that would be a great replacement. And Vucevic, as good of a season as he is having, will be another year older. And it looks like he's quite fed up. Did you see the post-game interview where two of the younger Bulls players are jumping around, hopping about winning the game during Vucevic's post-game interview on the court, and like he was getting visibly upset with them? Like, basically he had a look on his face like, stop being children, because he's talking about how the Bulls are messing around in these games and they're not being professional and serious, and here are two young players hooting and hollering and jumping around and trying to, get into his post-game interview. I think Vucevic is about done with Chicago. I feel pretty good about. Is he going to want to take X number of dollars to be Nikola Jokic's backup? That remains to be seen, but certainly a player that needs to be on the Nuggets watch list. But you're not going to be able, let's say they lose all three. For one reason or another. Bruce Brown wants another cash grab. Tim Hardaway decides he doesn't want to be there anymore. And then already with Valanciunas, you have Europe calling him. Let's say all three of them go. And you got to get three new guys in. I don't know how you do that. With Aaron Gordon now going from 20-something million to 30 and giving Peyton Watson a similar extension to what you gave Christian Brown. So there would be an argument to say, all things being equal, because really both of these moves are going to be salary dumps or asset dumps, as is the case with Watson. He doesn't make any money. You would just be getting rid of them for the flexibility. And you could get more flexibility by moving Aaron Gordon than you could by moving Peyton Watson. And you're seeing what Peyton Watson in a more of a starring role over the last week has been able to do. But all that being said, and this is not the sentimentality of the situation. I know that a lot of fans would not, they'd be pearl clutching if the mere idea that Aaron Gordon was going to be traded, given what he laid on the line for the Nuggets. And I get that, and that's certainly a plus for Aaron Gordon. But I think you can make a basketball case to keep Aaron Gordon and figure out something else with Peyton Watson. Okay, because Aaron Gordon, the last couple of years, I know this isn't going to continue forever, he actually has improved. The three-point shooting has gotten better the last couple of years. I think he's not a better shot blocker. I think all in all, he's a better defender than Peyton Watson is. And I also think, and this is important, it's harder to move a guy that's going to make $30 million. Think about what Aaron Gordon represented to the Denver Nuggets when they acquired him. How many other teams are out there that could use that kind of a guy at $30 million? I think the big Nuggets move regarding their core players was moving Michael Porter. I don't think that they have any interest in the big three, as it were now, with Gordon, Jokic, and Murray. I don't think they have any thought about moving on from any of the three of them. They made the move, and they can stay flexible as long as they don't go overboard and decide what we're seeing from Peyton Watson, we want to pay him. Because then you're not going to have enough. You're not going to be able to keep your depth. And part of why Peyton Watson has been good, I think, this year is not talking about when he's filled in for Aaron Gordon, because that's a different story. That's being able to play with Nikola Jokic, which has to be factored in here. Aaron Gordon, I think, without Nikola Jokic, would be a very good player. I don't know how good Peyton Watson would necessarily be without Nikola Jokic. But when Peyton Watson's been good in the role he was supposed to have this season, They're not asking as much from him. Hit a couple of corner threes, get a block or two. That's not a guy that's worth $20 million. So I will say that if the Nuggets are doing their job, if Ben Tenzer and John Wallace are doing their job, they will discuss very quietly behind closed doors the feasibility of moving Aaron Gordon. Because you have to. You have to look at it. You can do the exercise without wanting to move him. This is not about desire. This is about practicality. This is about looking at all of your options, especially with the financial rules that are in place right now in the NBA. You have to be open to everything. Doesn't mean you have to make calls about it. Doesn't mean you have to do any actionable steps, but you got to discuss it. So I understand why they would discuss what you and I are discussing right now. You'd have more flexibility by moving on from Aaron Gordon. And maybe Peyton Watson could be in the ballpark of what Aaron Gordon is as a player. Maybe. But you have the chance, even with Aaron Gordon's contract, I think, to be able to keep your flexibility. But if you lock in Peyton Watson, that's gone. And we're back to the Nuggets going 6 or 7 guys deep on the bench. I don't think anybody wants to go back to that. And the idea that you're going to draft and develop, picking in the mid-20s or later, I don't see it. I think Peyton Watson is the best trade chip that the Nuggets have. Were they going to get a lot back? Probably not. He is a restricted free agent. But I still think he makes more sense to move on from and still be able to keep the flexibility you need to fortify the depth or to keep the depth. I mean, who knows? Tim Hardaway seems happy. Bruce Brown seems happy. He made that cash grab thing a few years ago. Is he going to play 1 year and then try to do it again? I think Valanciunas is the guy that is probably as good as gone after this season is over. I think, and we can debate whether they get somebody that fits as well as Jonas Valanciunas, which is going to be very difficult to do. But they'll have the money available to get the next Valanciunas, as long as they don't sign Peyton Watson. And I think it was incredibly telling that they decided that Christian Braun was the restricted free agent that they were willing to get done early, and they weren't willing to do that with Peyton Watson. Now, you could say that Braun deserves it more than Watson, and I want to argue with you. But they wanted to get one deal done clearly, quickly, and the other one they seem pretty content to let play out a little bit. I don't think we're to the point where Aaron Gordon being on the chopping block or the trade block is a real thing. But we'll see as the legend of Peyton Watson grows. 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports after this. Want to get this text in from Tom regarding our question that I posed early on in the program today. Of the 7 current AFC playoff teams, which one do you trust the most? Little litmus test here. My top 3: Buffalo, New England, and Denver. And then it's Indy, and then I have a lot of questions about everyone else. I mean, I have questions about every team in the AFC, to be fair, but I have a lot of questions. I think I would have to contort myself into some crazy shapes for me to make a case for Baltimore, LA, or Jacksonville to be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl this year. The other teams, I think that's really where the list is. Right? Of the 7 playoff teams, I think there's 4 that can wake up every morning and look at themselves in the mirror and really, truly believe themselves when they say, we can go to a Super Bowl. But which one do you trust more or the most? 719-24-7-1313. Tom says Broncos have proved they can win while Bo is not great. Broncos defense is at home would be tough to beat. I'll take the Broncos over the Bills. I did pose the question if the Bills were playing the Broncos tomorrow, which they would if the season ended today, who you got. And then adds, I don't believe in the Pats in the playoffs, and I'm a Pats fan. Couple of things there, Tom. First of all, why don't you believe in New England? I can't imagine that you think that the Patriots are like way down. You're simply talking you would take the Broncos over New England. Which, okay. That's fine, but you can't bury New England, right? They have a shot here. But the other part of it, Broncos have proved they can win while Bo is not great. Yeah, but can they do Can the Broncos go to a Super Bowl if Bo Nix, I don't want to say if he's not great. Doesn't he have to be what he was against Kansas City? I mean, wouldn't he have to play at that level for the Broncos to make it out of the AFC? Or are we really talking about Brad Johnson, Trent Dilfer, Jim, wasn't it Jim Miller that was the quarter? No, Sexy Rexy. Is that really the conversation where, and I'm not saying Bo Nix is worse than all of those guys, but is it really that kind of a situation? Or to make it a more local reference, is it really 2015 Peyton Manning? Is that really what this situation is? Can you really trust the Broncos more than anyone else in the AFC if that's the way you're looking at them? Because I'll tell you, I don't know where you were at with that 2015 Broncos team. There were a few off ramps that I tried to take on that team because Peyton Manning. I'm like, this level of quarterbacking is going to win them a Super Bowl? It didn't win them a Super Bowl, but they won a Super Bowl despite that. I don't know that you can have the utmost faith in the Denver Broncos, the most trust in the Denver Broncos over any other AFC playoff team if the idea is, Bo Nix. And I don't even know if Kansas City was that breakthrough. I think the deep ball from Bo Nix was certainly quite the revelation, but he still was a guy that was kind of meh for 3 quarters. Can you trust the Broncos more than any other team if that's the Bo Nix that you're getting? I don't know that you can. Doesn't Bo Nix have to be at least what he was against Kansas City for the Denver Broncos? And I'm just saying the sheer numbers. Forget, quarters 1 through 3, how it compares to quarter 4. Just take the game in its totality. The numbers Bo Nix put up. Doesn't he have to be at least that every game in the playoffs for them to get out of the AFC? Isn't there another level that every quarterback has to go to in the postseason to really believe that they're a Super Bowl contender? And we don't know. Bo Nix has played one game. Like, I can sit on my side and say that, I haven't seen it yet from Bo Nix, so I'm skeptical. I think I have every right to be that way. Maybe Bo Nix can raise his game to another level in the postseason, but doesn't he have to? I think he does. I don't think this is you can get by with less than your best and find your way into the Super Bowl, especially with how evenly matched. I mean, we could go Buffalo, New England, Denver, Indianapolis. The fact of the matter is there's not one of these teams that's head and shoulders above the others. Any one of these teams could probably win. Any one of these teams could probably lose. Wouldn't it be the team that can raise their game just a little bit more that ultimately wins this? I think so. I think in order for the Broncos to get to the Super Bowl, to get out of the AFC, Bo Nix, I think he has to raise it. This offense has to raise their game. Doesn't have to be by leaps and bounds. It's got to be a little bit better. Especially if you're going to put them at the top. Broncos, as currently constructed, as they have shown, yeah, they're in the conversation. But to make them the favorite, to put most of your trust in them, you got to at least acknowledge Bo Nix has got to be a little bit better. Take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. So, interesting move out of Boulder. Announced by Deion Sanders that Julian Lewis will not play in the season finale to preserve his red shirt. Now, what Deion Sanders did, and the fact of the matter is CU has very little to nothing to play for in terms of bowl eligibility. But Deion said, I've made a decision that Juju is going to redshirt. That's my decision. I want what's best for the kid, what's best for his family, what's best for this wonderful university. I think maybe you could omit the last part. I really do. Because what that quote reads to me like is what so many coaches, Deion's very unique. He's not unique in this. With how player-centric college football has become, this is a move that you have to make. Even though I'm not saying I was expecting him to do this, but now that he's made it, I'm like, it makes all the sense in the world. Because you have to recruit your own players. You have to do what is in their best interest. Somebody has to tell me, other than injury risk, why not playing Julian Lewis this game is what's best for the University of Colorado. I can't follow that logic. And what is he going to need the extra year for? I would need that explained to me. I don't know. I think he just threw that in there. Or I'll look at it this way. What's best for the university is that Julian Lewis is happy and stays in Boulder. That's where it's good for the university. If that's what Deion Sanders meant, I'm totally on board with that. Because what I've seen from Julian Lewis, they got something in him. They do. It's a long road yet to still travel. But I will tell it from the cameo that Julian Lewis has made, there's something there. And I think it's enough to give Buffs fans some hope about what's to come next year and beyond. So the easiest way for that hope to be gone is for Julian Lewis to be gone. So I guess to lump all of them in at the same level is not the same. Doing what's best for Julian Lewis and his family will eventually be what's best for the university. Right? The cause and effect. It's not that Julian Lewis not playing on Saturday is in itself what's best for the university. A byproduct of keeping Julian Lewis happy is what's best for the university. That's what this is about. And look, again, it's not just Deion. Every coach in college athletics has to do this. This is the recruiting pitch. This is the free agent pitch. I talked earlier about the Broncos maybe making some inroads with some of their internal free agents. We saw Chris McFarland get Marty Natchez' deal done in recent weeks, and he extended Scott Wedgwood. Like, this is the same thing that Deion Sanders is doing. I don't want you to hit the open market. Stay here. Now, there's probably a financial part of this that is not known to the public. But this is the pitch. This is Julian Lewis is in-house. Look how well we take care of you. Look at what you've been able to do. You got a future here. In a game that means very little, if we're being honest about it. You don't have to play. You don't have to put yourself in harm's way. But remember this, when your agent or whatever tampering school comes calling and to say, hey, you should jump in the transfer portal. The Buffs can say, we held you out of a meaningless game. We brought you along slowly. We didn't rush you out onto the field. I actually think, what the Buffs have done with Julian Lewis has actually been very Julian Lewis-centric. Hasn't really looked out for the best interests of wins and losses. Hasn't necessarily looked out for the best interests of fans who have been clamoring for weeks for something to cling to in terms of hope. I think they have done everything for Julian Lewis. And if he ends up bolting through the transfer portal, like, that's on him, and he becomes public enemy number one in Boulder. Everything Deion has done, slow play putting Julian Lewis out there, holding him out of this game to preserve his red shirt. That's in Julian Lewis's best interest, which down the line you hope is what's in the best interest of CU football, because he stays. And what you have seen in very small doses, you can see on a regular basis next fall. And I do think there's something there. I just want to reiterate that. There's something there with Julian Lewis. I don't know if this guy's the second coming of, like, Caleb Williams, but there's something there. And Buffs need to do a lot of other stuff around him to make it all work, but something there with Julian Lewis. 719-24-7-1313, the three stories that are driving the show, coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in. Hour 3 on this Tuesday edition of the show, the final edition of the show this week. A lot of reasons for that. I am traveling to Florida for Air Force women's basketball the rest of this week, but we got an NFL triple header on Thanksgiving. Here on Extra Sports 1300 tomorrow, we have Air Force men's basketball. The suddenly red hot Falcons looking for their 4th win in a row, hosting UNC. And then we got more NFL football on Friday. So even if I were here, it would be dicey whether I would have a show, but I'll also be elsewhere. And hopefully wherever you are traveling to, or if you're staying home for Thanksgiving, that you enjoy the holiday. In the meantime, let's talk some sports before we separate for the next few days. 719-247-1313 is the text line and the phone line, conveniently so. If you'd like to get in touch with the program, perhaps you have some thoughts on the stories that are driving today's show. All right, let's start. I could play like 8 highlights from this game, but I'll take this one for story number 1.
Kirk's going to try to draw the foul. Behind the back to Watson. Wow. Oh, my. Wow.
Yeah, regretted it. Probably should have played the half-court shot. Nikola Jokic with the insane behind-the-back pass to Peyton Watson as the Nuggets defeat the Memphis Grizzlies by a final of 125-115. There are a few different storylines. One, Nikola Jokic doing ridiculous things like knocking down a half quarter and acting like he doesn't care and nonchalantly walking over the bench. That pass where he goes to his left and throws behind the back to Peyton Watson. So Jokic was terrific again, but really the guy I want to talk about, and I think we need to talk about both of them together probably more and more as we go along, but I do want to separate the two of them for the moment and talk about Jamal Murray, because his performance of late has been, to me, the biggest story for the Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray is not just putting together a bounce back season. His numbers are at career high levels. Points, rebounds, assists. Career highs. He is also, I think this is a big reason why we're seeing this Jamal Murray. He's also on track for career high in games played. He's missed 1 out of the Nuggets' 17 games. And when you're Jamal Murray, you are very much a rhythm player. When you're out of the lineup for 3 games and you come back, it takes you about 5 to get back going, and then you're banged up again. This Jamal Murray has been healthy. He's been on the court, and he's been rolling at career high levels. And you put him with Nikola Jokic, and you could say that we have never seen this duo play at a higher level than they are playing at right now. But it's not just the stat accumulation that Jamal Murray has done. Fourth quarter against Houston, fourth quarter against Memphis, he was probably the Nuggets' most consequential player. But we're seeing the impact, I think, of this, the depth that the Nuggets have on Jamal Murray, just like you're seeing on Nikola Jokic. He's more well-rested. He's playing at a higher level over fewer minutes. But before the depth, it's Jamal Murray. It's Jamal Murray answering the bell. It's Jamal Murray being the player that I knew he could be, a player that is deserving of all-star consideration. They are going conference voting. So anybody in the East, don't worry about it. Jamal Murray's not competing with them. They're not doing the international world stuff till after the All-Stars are selected. And they're not even worrying about positions. Jamal Murray is one of the 12 most deserving players of an All-Star nod in the Western Conference. You can barely tell the difference between Jamal Murray's stat line this year and Anthony Edwards's. Jamal Murray is playing at his best, and his best is, like I have theorized many a time, all-star quality, all-star caliber. And whether he gets a nod or not, we know that the starting five is a popularity contest. There are some low information voters out there in the NBA world. So there's probably going to be one starter that not only doesn't deserve to start, but may not be more deserving of an all-star nod over Jamal Murray. So we'll worry about that when the time comes, whether Jamal Murray is snubbed or not. But the fact that he can be snubbed, he is snubbable. He is putting together a season that is deserving of making an all-star team. And just that is what I've been asking all offseason, really for 2 years, and what the Nuggets have been asking and what you as a Nuggets fan have been asking. Just play at that level. Whether you get an all-star bid or not, that's a different conversation. Put yourself in the conversation, which he has. And to me, if I am just straight voting on the 12 most deserving all-stars in the West, Jamal Murray is one of those 12. And put him with Nikola Jokic, and you have a duo that has already previous years been labeled the best two-man game in the league, and they're both playing better at the same time than maybe they ever have been. Scary thought for every team pretty much not named Oklahoma City. But I bet you OKC respects the Denver Nuggets. 125-115. Nuggets bounce back after that clunker against Sacramento over the weekend. Here is story number 2.
You know, I don't think that's so much the case with us, to be real. And I say that just because you're a much, much smaller school, and your alumni that you do have from here are really distributed all over the country. Not the country, but all over the globe.
That was Air Force head coach Troy Calhoun today when asked how much the CSU rivalry has meant. Because after this year, as you are well aware, CSU will go to the Pac-12. So this will not be automatically on the schedule. And listening to Troy Calhoun there, it doesn't seem like he's going to make an effort to put CSU on their schedule anytime soon. And it brings up a fascinating topic, I think. And this applies to Air Force sports across the board, not just football. How much do local rivalries matter? When you are an institution that recruits across the country, everything that Troy Calhoun said in terms of the facts, the alumni, their goals, and I know that Air Force's goal year in and year out is not to beat CSU. You'll never catch a Air Force quarterback coming back, getting his jersey retired, saying, and it still sucks to be a CSU Ram, like Josh Allen did this past weekend. Like, I know it doesn't mean as much to them. Their focus is on Army and Navy. But I think that there is a group of people that maybe Troy Calhoun is not referring to in that. And it's the group of people that I just so happen to be talking to right now. I understand that beating CSU is not, and I've talked to Air Force alumni. I haven't heard one mention that their fondest memory of playing football at the academy or playing any sport at the academy is beating CSU or beating Denver or beating Northern Colorado. It's always Army, Navy. And I get that and I understand that. But does Air Force CSU mean something to you, the fan? Do you lament at all the fact that it's coming to an end? At least for the foreseeable future. Because I remember a few years ago when the Air Force Falcons pulled off beating both CSU and CU in the same year, and they were dubbed the Kings of Colorado, and Falcon fans loved that. Loved it. I think it doesn't mean, I think Troy Calhoun is right to an extent. I think he's right when he says that, you know, the alumni are probably not, you know, lamenting too much that they're not going to play CSU anymore. They want to know about Air Force Army or in Air Force Navy. You're not going to get a ton of local recruits. You get some. Some Colorado kids do go to the Air Force Academy, and it probably means more to them to play CSU than other teams. Not Army, Navy, again. But I would be curious, the fan base, because I feel like the fan base that goes out to Falcon Stadium is going to miss playing against CSU. As opposed to, I mean, we're talking non-conference. So you got 4 non-conference games. They're going to schedule, you know, an FCS school week 1. We know that. We know they're going to get the service academy teams. That leaves 1. Can you save that slot every single year for CSU? No, you can't. And let's not forget, CSU is leaving. Okay, this is not Air Force saying, we don't care about you anymore, we're leaving. CSU chose to leave. So clearly it doesn't mean as much to them either, this rivalry. I understand that Air Force should not hold that date out every year like CU should to play the Rams. But this series doesn't mean nothing. Right? I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I got to imagine, and we'll see, I guess I can be proven right or wrong based on, you know, looking back at attendance numbers, but I feel like the CSU game means something. And I think there are Falcon fans that are probably going to miss it a little bit. But I understand it's a numbers game. Right? Nobody is saying play CSU over the 2 service academies. Now, I don't know if you love watching Air Force stomp Bucknell or Abilene Christian or whatever it might be, but you understand the practicality of that. And the Air Force is certainly not the only team that comes out with a soft game to start the schedule. I feel like it has meant something. The future of the rivalry, I get it. From a practical standpoint, you just can't keep scheduling it. And that's on CSU. Right? They left. But I don't know. This idea that almost no one cares or hasn't meant a lot for Air Force. And by the way, they've been wildly successful against CSU over the last few years. I'd have to respectfully disagree. I think the Air Force CSU game has been one that outside of Army and Navy has been a big one. If they play Boise State, I think that's a significant one. Certainly Air Force, I understand, is different than the other two Colorado schools that we talk about, but they are still in Colorado, and there's still some pride, I think, for people who go to Falcon Stadium that live here to say Air Force beat CSU. I think in some way I'm going to miss it. Like it was a game that you'd expect and a game that you're like, this means a little something regardless of what's going on. And we know that both of these teams have had a really difficult season. I'd like to think that this kind of perhaps swan song of this rivalry would bring back some nostalgia that would make people remember how fun the rivalry was and the fact that Air Force, despite being in a different world when it comes to college athletics, has still been able to go toe-to-toe with a program that has thought very highly of themselves over the years. Right? CSU has these big aspirations of what they want to be athletically. And yet, for more often than not, over the last half a decade or so, it's been Air Force beating CSU. Despite this, that, and the other thing. And you know what those are in today's world of college athletics. These games have meant something. When I call Air Force against CSU for women's basketball, that feels like a bigger game. It does. I think it does on the men's side. And I get it. Like if you are somebody who are from another state, you went to school at Air Force, and then you moved back out of the state, yeah, it probably didn't hit you. But for fans of the Falcons, fans of college football in this state that live here, I think it's been meaningful that Air Force has been able to play this team and beat this team on a regular basis. Take your thoughts on that. 719-24-7, 1313. I don't think anybody would confuse it with Army and Navy, and it's probably light years from Army and Navy. I'm going to miss it a little bit. I mean, it's CSU's fault. This isn't going to continue. Take your thoughts. 719-24-7, 1313. Taking your thoughts at 719-247-1313, the end of the Air Force CSU rivalry on Friday up in Fort Collins. Does that mean something to you? Troy Calhoun today, I think, made it very much sound like there wasn't a lot in it over the years. And I'd just be curious now that it's ending, whether that's the way that you feel. Here's a couple of texts. This from Dave says, if Air Force CSU was a David and Goliath matchup, it would be a deeper rivalry. Wyoming is more intriguing for me each year. But is Air Force Wyoming a David and Goliath? I don't think that it is. I could acknowledge, like, look, if Air Force played CU, the closest thing to David versus Goliath is Air Force against Boise State, right? So I get your point about CSU. If it didn't feel like the two teams were on such equal, two programs were on equal footing, maybe it would be more intriguing. Although, doesn't that kind of, like, if Troy Calhoun went more in depth and he talked about, you know, everything that CSU has at their disposal, it kind of is David versus Goliath. It's not in terms of success, because there were many years, if you knew nothing about the, you know, which one is the, I mean, it would be hard. One's called the Air Force, and you wouldn't know which one is the military institution. But if you just didn't know all that Air Force has to deal with, right? And they they happily deal with it because, you know, of the greater mission at the academy. But all the things that their mission keeps them from being able to participate in, right? NIL, transfer portal being the two most notable things, right? The fact that you can't tell the difference between Air Force and CSU. You honestly can't tell me, just watching the teams on the field, which one has all of these now, and not only transfer portal and NIL, but an insane requirement to get into the school. I don't mean insane like it's crazy. Like Ryan Kaufman could never, ever, even at his best as a student, be even remotely qualified to go to the Air Force Academy. That's what I mean by insane. Like, the standards for admission are incredibly high. And then it's, you know, the day-to-day life that you lead as a cadet. And then it's transfer portal, and then it's NIL, right? The fact that you can't tell the difference, you couldn't tell me which program has all of these things that make it more difficult to compete in college athletics. I don't know. It's a referendum on CSU or kudos to Air Force. I'll let you take it in whatever direction you want to. Maybe it's a bit of both. But shouldn't it be David versus Goliath? Isn't it almost every matchup with that Air Force has David and Goliath? But I do get your point. Like, it doesn't feel like your traditional, because say what you will about the performance on the field or on the court. Right? CSU is a more notable athletic program than Air Force is. Right? It has a little bit more notoriety than Air Force does. But if it was like Alabama and Mercer, right? If CSU were to actually finally achieve what they perpetually set out to achieve and never reach in terms of their athletic excellence, except maybe in basketball, if they ever achieve that, then I get your point, Dave. And I think is what Dave's referring to. But even CU, when Air Force played them, was not in a great spot. But it doesn't have that David Goliath, big brother, little brother type of feel to it. I see where you're going there. Wyoming has some history. Not great history. Dave Christensen. But I see where you're going with. Ben says, I think it's more important to the citizens of Colorado for these interstate rivalries, particularly in Colorado. I'm from California, and they're important. The big ones, UCLA, USC, Cal versus Stanford. But I think for the state, if you could rotate these three, play against each other and have some type of Colorado trophy, but it means more to the citizens of Colorado than it probably would be to the institutions because they're not natural rivals. I think that's a fair point, too. And that's what I acknowledged. And look what boat I am in. Born and raised in Colorado. Watched college football from those three institutions growing up. Attended games at those three schools when I was younger. So I am a Coloradan. So I am the person saying that CSU playing Air Force every year was cool. I liked it. It was one of the games on the schedule that I did look forward to. But I am that person that Ben is describing. I am the person that cares very much about the Kings of Colorado and the state championship and all of that kind of stuff. But I think we're coming at it from a couple of different perspectives. Troy Calhoun is coming at it from the perspective of, when I go and recruit guys, I'm not saying, hey, you could come and beat CSU. Because going to a kid in Georgia or Texas and saying that, they're going to go, oh, okay, cool. Where again is Fort Collins? You know what I mean? I get it. I think what it is not so much agree, disagree. It's about the perspective you look at it through. If you are Air Force through and through and you're, you went to the school, you're from out of state, you went there, and immediately after getting your degree, you're gone. You have a different perspective than somebody like me who grew up watching all of these schools and covering these schools and kind of coming at it from the Colorado perspective of don't forget Air Force. And even before I started this gig, I was that way. My buddies and I would play as Air Force on college football. We wouldn't be CU or CSU. It'd be Air Force. Because it's cool. And then you got to beat CSU because we'd always put CU and CSU. Well, CSU, I guess you didn't have to, but always put the in-state schools. It's just a matter of perspective. And I'm coming at it from the perspective of I was born and raised in this state. And CU versus CSU, CU versus Air Force, CSU versus Air Force. Heck, UNC and DU. Those matter. I mean, they're not football But like tomorrow, the men's basketball team takes on Northern Colorado. I think it would be a nice feather in their cap to beat the Bears. The season opener for Air Force women's basketball was them beating DU. I thought that was cool that they beat DU. 719-24-7, 1313. Speaking of Air Force, no argument in terms of hockey and what the rivalry is. We can relate it to Colorado, relate this conversation to Air Force hockey because DUCC, right? If Air Force and CC stop playing each other, I think people around here would be disappointed. I know that. And I think Air Force hockey fans very much like when the Falcons go up against DU. But there's no question who the biggest rival to Air Force hockey is, and that is Army. And this past weekend, the Falcons went into their barn, went into Army's barn, and got the sweep. You can hear more on that coming up at the top of the hour with the Frank Serratori Show. But in the meantime, you and I have one more segment here on Extra Sports 1300. Last reminder I'm going to give you when it comes to our Louisa Graf Black Friday giveaway. It's your chance to win a sterling silver lab-grown diamond pendant and earring set from the fine folks at Louisa Graf Jewelers. All you need to do to enter is go to extrasports1300.com, and you should do it sooner rather than later because the contest ends mañana. What else do I want to get to here? Oh, the semifinalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame have been revealed. There's a bunch of names, and I look at it here. Did they say 26? So 26 made kind of the first cut or whatever, and now they got to pare down, and it's usually like 4 to 8. And I'm looking at this group, and I'm saying Drew Brees, absolutely. Like, I was just looking, which ones are no-brainers? Do I not have to do any research? I'm like, they're Hall of Famers. Drew Brees. Easy. Boom. He's one. Larry Fitzgerald. No question. Easy. Adam Vinatieri. Absolutely. I would go Frank Gore. And I know his numbers, you could, and this was an argument against Jerome Bettis, the stat accumulator, like you play for long enough. But I think Frank Gore's, I'm not saying he's more deserving than a Drew Brees or an Adam Vinatieri or Fitzgerald, but man, the guy played forever. He was productive for forever. I kind of feel like that guy deserves the nod. I have 3, and there was one more. Oh, I think Witten. I think Witten's a Hall of Famer. I think that's pretty easy. I don't think you have to, incur too much brain damage to think that Jason Witten is a Hall of Famer. I'll say this is not going to be a great Hall of Fame class. But I think there are some that are definite Hall of Famers. That's where I would go. So there's like 4, and then you go beyond that. Who gets in? I think Luke Kuechly, he should probably be a no-brainer for that position, right? I think Luke Kuechly should get in. But and then they're going to take one more wide receiver, whether it's Reggie Wayne or Torrey Holt, Steve Smith. I'd probably go Steve Smith over Holt or Wayne. But those are ones that take a little bit more. But what this class is going to come down to. Are Eli and Phillip getting in? And I will tell you, Eli Manning is absolutely going to be enshrined in Canton. He's getting in this class. And does no one else feel a little bit weird that Eli Manning is sharing the same stage as Drew Brees? Like, does no one see what I have been saying? Like, okay, you want to put in Eli because of the 2 Super Bowls, and that had to, they were the only thing standing between the Patriots and conquering 20 years of the NFL and winning 20 straight Super Bowls and all that. Like, okay, I don't think it's a good enough argument. You can have the Patriots in, and I'd be good. I don't need Eli. You know where I stand with Eli. But you're going to see Drew Brees and Eli Manning side by side, and you're going to see what I'm saying. Like, there are levels to being Hall of Fame worthy. And I'm not going to say that putting Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers in at the same time as Drew Brees is like insulting to Drew Brees, or it detracts from Drew Brees. But if the 3 of them all get in and they're all standing on the stage, I'm going to say one of these things is not like the others. Drew Brees was a world-class quarterback. Phillip Rivers was a prolific regular season quarterback. He fit very well that he played with Marty Schottenheimer because he is the Marty Schottenheimer of quarterbacks. Did a lot of good, was probably better than many of his peers, but ultimately, this is not ring culture. Don't you got to get one? Don't you got to play for one? And then there's Eli, who is not even close to a Hall of Fame quarterback, other than these two games that are Super Bowls. I'm just going to, like, Drew Brees, I'll drop the Eli thing and the Phillip Rivers thing. I wouldn't put them in the Hall of Fame, but if you want to, that's fine. Can we just acknowledge that Drew Brees is a not more than a notch above those other two? That there are levels to Hall of Famers, and Drew Brees in this quarterback class is head and shoulders above the other two. Sustained excellence in the postseason, has a ring to show for it. One of the most prolific passers ever to walk planet Earth. It's like put Eli and Phillip Rivers together and you get Drew Brees. He's just much better than both of them. Much more deserving than both of them. But I get it. Eli's going to get in. He's going to get in because he played in New York and his name is Manning. And because the two best games of his career happen to be against Tom Brady, he's going to get in. I've conceded that. I know that's going to happen, but can we just acknowledge that he is not more deserving than Drew Brees? And can we do at least a little bit of digging? Can we not say that Eli Manning is this no doubt Hall of Famer? Can we at least go through the effort of doing more than just remember those two games that he played against Brady? Can people present a little bit more than that to make me feel better about Eli Manning getting into Canton? Because I feel like we don't have very many arguments outside of that. Nobody beat the Patriots twice. Okay, well, last time I checked, he got something for that. He got something for that. He got two somethings for that. He got a shiny trophy that said, you beat the Patriots in this game. And he got another one when he did it again. He got his reward. Eli's going to get in. And I think Phillip Rivers is going to get in too. But Brees, Fitzgerald, Gore, Vinatieri, Witten, Kuechly, I think these are. I would actually go a step beyond, and I would say, just give me Brees and Fitzgerald and Vinatieri. Give me those three guys, and you do what you want with the rest of the Hall of Fame class. Give me those three and acknowledge that those three, there's not even a question. Do they deserve to be Hall of Famers? Because I can even acknowledge, as much as I think Jason Witten should get in, I understand the argument against. I understand the argument against Frank Gore. Give me Brees, Vinatieri, and Fitzgerald. And let's not even have a conversation. Let's just all agree that they're in no matter what, no extra effort necessary to make a case for them. And then we can do this with everybody else. But those are among the semifinalists. And oh, by the way, most important thing, with all due respect to Brees and Gore and Fitzgerald, can Mike Shanahan just get in? Can he just get in this year? And we could be done with this? The guy has waited long enough, and the great thing is he's still spry and all of that kind of stuff. We're not doing this posthumous thing because we kicked the can down the road. Can we put Mike Shanahan in and give him what he deserves? To be immortalized for the impact of the game, not just because of what he was able to do to help John Elway, one of its greatest quarterbacks of all time, be on that Mount Rushmore by winning multiple Super Bowls, but also the lasting impact that Mike Shanahan has. Can this be the year? Can Mike Shanahan get in? After this, I mean, I know Peyton's going to get in, but we can be done with the going to bat for the Broncos after this for a while. Till Von Miller retires. Then he's going to be the next one. But Shanahan just needs to get in now. That'll be it. For the week, enjoy your holiday. Hopefully you're spending it with the people you want to be spending it with, doing the things you want to be doing during whether that's shopping or not shopping, eating or not eating. I will pop up every now and again. Thursday on Thanksgiving, I'll have Air Force women's basketball against FAU. I will be doing it on Saturday against Wright State. So I may talk to you then. If not, again, enjoy your holiday, and we'll reconvene on Monday after the Broncos take on the Commanders. In the meantime, stick around for the Frank Serratori show coming off of a huge, massive, big weekend for the Fighting Falcons. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300.